Welcome everyone to the March of Mega Man 2, and we start off with a play it through of Mega Man 5, brought to us by Capcom. Now Mega Man 5 was released in 1992 by Capcom, and it was during the later days of the NES console. The Super Nintendo had already hit markets, and many companies were already making games for that system. However, Capcom still had two Mega Man games left to release in the 8-bit era. And while the gameplay remains mainly the same, there were a few changes made to make the game a little bit different. Now with each of the Mega Man games, I'd like to start off by looking at the box art. Considering the first couple Mega Man games on the NES in the US had pretty awful box art, really not conveying properly what the game was really about. Now by the early 90s and by the later Mega Man titles, we actually get to see that they really kind of evolved what Mega Man looks like, especially in the US, going towards his more traditional look. The box art actually completely conveys an accurate portrayal of the Mega Man character, especially considering they also had already started marketing the character more, with action figures as well as a cartoon series. Now the Japanese box art is very similar to the previous Japanese box arts, showing Mega Man and all the other robot masters that are included in this game around the background. The European release of the game had the same box art as the US release. So here we go with Mega Man 5 on the NES. Now, as far as the other Mega Man games, we always had Dr. Wily being the main villain of the games. They tried to change it up a little bit with Mega Man 4, however we found out in the end it was still Dr. Wily pulling the strings. Now this game starts off where we find out that Mega Man's brother Proto Man has basically gone around, caused a lot of havoc, he has kidnapped Dr. Light, and of course it's going to be up to Mega Man to discover why did Proto Man do this, and it's going to have to try to stop him as well. The only clue Proto Man left behind was his yellow scarf to show that it was him who caused all the problems, and that we see that now in the lower right corner of our title screen. And like all the other Mega Man games, we have a choice of one of 8 robot masters to start with. You can pick them in any order, complete them in any order, and use any weapon against them. However, each robot master has one specific weapon that you get from another robot master that can help defeat him easier. Now in this run of the game, I'm going to go ahead and start with Gravity Man. His weakness is actually Starman's ability, the Star Crash. Now most of the gameplay mechanics return from the previous games. We have our slide ability back, as well as our charge up ability that we can do with the Mega Buster. Of course we also have Rush abilities, Rush being Mega Man's pet dog, who can give us different things, including the previous games, of course the Rush Coil, as well as the Rush Jet. Now they've been changed up a little bit for this game, and they'll be changed up again in Mega Man 6 and throughout the rest of the series. This was done, of course, probably just to add a little bit of variety to this particular game. Now, really, when it comes to these later Mega Man titles, since you love the gameplay already, it comes down to the stages. What can the stages offer? What gimmicks are in the stages? What's going to make you want to go ahead and fight this Robot Master and play this game over previous ones? One of the interesting things, of course, being in this stage is we have the whole gravity factor being, of course, Gravity Man. The ability to go upside down and actually have to walk across the ceiling and get used to that takes a little bit of practice to get used to because, of course, really your buttons are a little changed. You also have different jumps and different things you have to watch out for when trying to make it over certain gaps, being that you're upside down. Now what I just grabbed right there is you saw there was a letter M. That one was pretty easy to get, you just had to be on the roof to jump at it. This game goes ahead and adds something new to find in each of the stages. You have 8 Robot Master stages. You also have 8 letters and 1 symbol in Mega Man 5. So you collect all the letters that spell out Mega Man 5, V representing 5, the Roman numeral, and by doing so, you get a special new ability, which is Beat, the flying robot bird. And Beat ends up being a little bit useful, especially against the final boss of the game. Now here's our boss of this stage. This is, of course, Gravity Man. And he, of course, is going to be using the gravity gimmick for his battle. It's a pretty simple battle to go ahead and dodge. His projectile is only the one shot at a time, and what he likes to do is move from left to right, and then he flips the gravity and goes upside down. All you have to really do about it is prepare for that, make sure that you're not directly above or below him when he's about to change the gravity, and then shoot him when you're in mid-movement. Since his projectile is pretty easy to dodge, and since it takes a decent amount of time for him to flip the gravity on you, you have plenty of time to charge up your Mega Buster and give him a good shot when the gravity flips. With our first Mega Man 5 boss defeated, we're going to be getting our first ability in this game. By defeating Gravity Man, we get the Gravity Hold. Now with that ability and our first Robot Master defeated, we're going to go ahead and move on to our second one, and in this case I'm going to go ahead and pick Snowman. His weakness ends up being Napalm Man's ability, which is the Napalm Bomb. Now in Snowman's level, we kind of have the theme of a construction site mixed with a mining area, of course people mining stones, and a classic cave type area. Not a whole lot going on in this stage to give it kind of that unique feel. It's one of the more blander stages in my opinion, overall, in this game. Especially when you're comparing it to some of the previous games, as well as just the stage we just completed, being Gravity Man stage. Now to find the letter in this stage to go along with the Mega Man 5 letters, is when you get to this room right here, you want to go ahead and destroy this right wall, and then slide through, and you'll find the letter G, our second of the 8 letters. Now the only thing of note really in the stage is going to be these spinning platforms we'll find later on, that when you jump on them, they kind of rotate and move around a little bit, and then they immediately fall to the ground, so you have to be careful and quick when jumping on and off of them. But it's nothing we really haven't seen before. A lot of the enemies are really easy to dodge, and it's better just to go ahead and skip a lot of them than trying to defeat most of the enemies unless you're trying to build up some extra lives or get some of your health back. Then it's a good idea to go ahead and destroy some of those bats. We're also seeing in this stage, as I've been hit by him several times during the run of this level, is the new Matul in this game, the new Met, which is a Met that explodes and makes 3 little Mets that kind of bounce around and are extremely annoying. So if you thought the Mets were annoying in previous games and you've never played Mega Man 5, you haven't seen the worst ones yet. Thankfully though, this is the only game that we really see them during the NES Mega Man games. The other ones include our classic Mets, or our more classic Mets. Now here's those platforms that I mentioned before for the first time. As you can see, they rotate, you jump on them, and then they move in a certain already predetermined direction, and then they fall. So you have to be rather quick about jumping on and off of them, but they're pretty easy to manage. As you can see, also in some of the later Mega Man games, starting with 4, especially in 5 and 6, they kind of made them a little bit more easier. You're going to get a lot more drops of more key items, including extra lives and health upgrades. At least I seemingly always find more health and such in these. Now I'm using my Gravity Hold ability for the first time, and as you can see when I use it, it causes all the enemies on screen to kind of flip their gravity, and if you have nothing going upwards, they kind of just go up into the abyss and disappear off screen. Now right there, what I went ahead and did is I used the platforms just to show you how to go ahead and grab that energy tank if you want it. Never sure when you're going to need them, and you want to make sure that you collect as many of them as possible while going through. Of course, right there we have our little buddy, Eddie, or Flip Top, who gives us random items in different levels. He'll just shoot out a random item of his choosing. Usually if you need health, he'll shoot out something that's not a health piece. However, when you have full health like I had going into that part, he's of course going to give you a full chunk of health to help you out even though you don't need it. Now we are at the end of our stage as we see our Robot Master's door to head off into his lair. Just trying to grab an extra piece of health real quick and see if it'll help me out during the boss. Overall, Snowman's another one of the easier bosses in this game, even just with the Mega Buster. He uses these rotating rocks that are relatively easy to dodge. The only thing of real problem with him is when he lands, he instantly kind of falls apart, and you can't hit him when he's just the pile of rocks just laying there on the ground. You gotta wait for him to come back into full form before you can go ahead and land a hit on him. However, if you stay close to him, you can see you can get him really just to kind of jump around more so than actually throwing the rocks at you, and it makes for a pretty easy battle. By defeating him, we've defeated our second Robot Master, as well as we now have his ability, which is those rotating stones that we saw him pull out earlier. And those stones just happen to be called the Power Stones. So now with him defeated, we go ahead, and I'm going to just go ahead and finish up the top row and select Crystal Man as my next enemy. Crystal Man's weakness is actually Gyro Man's ability. Now Crystal Man's stage as well, kind of like Stone Man's, is kind of some of the same stuff we've seen before in some of the previous games. Not a whole lot of variety going on through the level, it's just a pretty bland stage in comparison to some of the previous stages. The level looks pretty nice, being of course a crystal theme. However, we've seen some of these same exact platforms and some of the same backgrounds and grounds that we've seen in some previous levels. Like Gemini Man's, for example, had a similar feel, and some of the other Mega Man bosses had a similar stage feel to this one. As I climb the ladder, we meet up with Eddie again, who gives me